Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Dental Board of California meeting. I'm Dr. Alan Felsenfeld and serve as the president of the board. Today is Thursday, November 9th, 2023. This board meeting is being held in person with additional participation through WebEx. For all those who wish to participate online, please log on to the website, the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on this agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comments shortly. For individuals who are participating via the WebEx, when called upon, the moderator will give the individual permission to unmute themselves, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude in the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment will be allowed per agenda item, per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with the testimony that was already provided, just state your name and that you are in support of any comments previously provided. I would now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during this meeting.
When it's time for public comment, we will be displaying
DCA moderator, go ahead.
Oh, my apologies. When it is time for public comment, we will be displaying instructions on the screen as shown right now. You will be asked to raise your hand with a hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. If you cannot find the hand button, we have a question and answer box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, a Q&A box. And we ask that you type the word comment into the Q&A box and send that comment to all participants. People will be answered in the order that comments are received. Oh, my apologies. That's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DCA moderator. I would like to call this meeting to order and ask the board secretary to please call the roll. Dr. Larin.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Lilia Larin, secretary. Chan?
Chan, present.
Chan, present. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, present.
Felsenfeld, present. Forge?
Forge, present.
Forge, present. Larin, present. McKenzie?
McKenzie here.
McKenzie, present. Medina? Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina here.
Molina, present. Olage?
Olagi, present.
Olage, present. Pacheco?
Pacheco, present.
Pacheco, present. Takur?
Takur, present.
Takur, present. You? You? Absent?
Yes. Hello?
Oh, okay. Hello. Yes. You? Okay. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Larin. We will move on to agenda item number 21, the board president's report on closed session items. We had a closed session last night, and we did the executive officer's annual performance review. We also acted on 3 pending enforcement cases. There was no discussion of any pending lawsuits. That concludes my report. Are there any in-person public comments? Seeing none, are there any public comments from the individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
We are now open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by hitting the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. And we will call on people in the order we have requests. If you need to, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
I do, thank you. We are now on agenda item number 22, the Dental Assisting Council Meeting Report. I'm going to ask Ms. Kara Miyasaki, Chair-elect of the Dental Assisting Council, to present this item.
Good morning, President Felsenfeld and members of the Dental Board. Here's a summary of the Dental Assisting Council meeting held on Wednesday, November 8, 2023. Agenda item 1 through 8 and number 10 included establishment of a quorum, approval of past meeting minutes, informational items, usual and customary updates. For agenda item 9A, the DAC appointed a two-person working group of DAC member Fowler and Miyasaki to review and revise regulatory language in regards to educational programs and course descriptions. Members Fowler and Miyasaki will work in consultation with board staff and the Regulations Council toward this goal. For agenda item 9B, the DAC approved a motion to revise regulations to reference how passing scores are determined and also remove information in the regulations referencing examinations that are no longer being offered. Also repeal information referencing dental hygiene examinations. For agenda item 11, nominations were held for 2024, resulting in Ms. Jerry Fowler elected as the DAC Vice Chair and Ms. Miyasaki, myself, elected as the DAC Chair. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any board member comments on the report? I see none. Anybody up on the WebEx? I don't see anybody. In person? That was the WebEx board people. I'm still here. All right, and in-person public comment.
Good morning. Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. We would just like to say that we're excited about the work group from the DAC, and we are also super excited to support and help in any way that we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Becker. Is there any other in-person public comment? Seeing none, are there public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 22. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
I do, thank you. And Ms. Miyasaki, congratulations again. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to agenda item 23, update regarding the board's sunset, the 2024 Sunset Review Report. Dr. Montez is going to report on that.
Good morning, and thank you. Tracy Montez, Executive Officer, Dental Board of California. As you recall, the Dental Board met on October 12th to review a draft Sunset Review Report. The draft is available online under meeting materials for the October 2023 meeting. At that meeting, the board approved the draft report. So therefore, the board staff will move forward to finalize the report, making any non-substantive changes and submit it to the legislature by the end of the calendar year. It is due January 4th. The board will go before the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions Code and the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development during the spring of 2024. We anticipate probably in March. That's usually the pattern. The board president and executive officer will both present testimony and answer questions from members of the legislature, and the public will have an opportunity to provide public comment. The public can provide comment during the hearing, and we've included the portal there in our agenda item if you have any type of position report or feedback to the legislature. And again, in preparation for the hearing, the committees will prepare a background paper concerning the board, its operations, and other issues, and the board will prepare a response to that paper. So that's in addition to the actual sunset report. The hearing, the background paper, and the board's response will inform a sunset bill introduced by the committees. The sunset bill, among other things, sets the next sunset date for the board, typically 4 years, but we'd be happy for any more than that. And we will submit any recommended legislative proposals as discussed and approved at prior meetings that could be part of this sunset bill as well. And so that's why we had a big push to get a number of legislative proposals done last year. Again, thank you, with the help of our attorneys and their input on this process. No action is requested from the board from this item, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Are there any board member questions or comments on this report and Dr. Montez's report? I see none. Are there any in-person public members who wish to make a comment on this report? I see none. DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the lines for public comments for those participating via WebEx?
We are now taking public comment on agenda item 23 online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
I do, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 24A, the status update on pending regulations. Mr. Bruggeman and I believe Ms. Shields are going to come up and help us along with those. And good morning to you both.
Good morning, President Felsenfeld. Good morning, board members. I'm David Bruggeman, the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist for the board. I'm here with our Regulations Counsel, Christy Shields. The item 24A concerns the regulatory packages which are active with the board, but we're not asking for specific board action at this time. This is simply an update, an informative item. We have a package that represents an update to the board's disciplinary guidelines. This would amend Section 1018 of our regulations. That's the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1018. And the package has been published and noticed, with the Office of Administrative Law, and is currently in the midst of a public comment period that is ending on next Tuesday, November 14th. If there are any adverse comments received during that comment period, the board will have an opportunity to address them at a future meeting, and then we'll proceed with the package at that point. The other active package that we're not asking for action at this time concerns revisions to the lost, destroyed, or mutilated licenses section of the regulations. That's California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1012, and the section related to inactive and active license status. That's Section 1017.2. And because there's a fee increase associated with the lost or mutilated license language, we're amending Section 1021 as well. This package was approved by agents. There's been an update since this memo has been written. The package was approved by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency on Monday of this week, on November 6th. And we're currently anticipating it being noticed by the Office of Administrative Law on next Friday, November 17th. That would be the start of the 45-day public comment period, which should end on January 3rd of next year. And as with any particular packages, should any adverse comments be received during the public comment period, the board will have the opportunity to address them at a future meeting. So that's the extent of the report on packages that we're not asking board action on at this time. We'll open it up for discussion and public comment.
Thank you. Is there any board member comment or questions for Mr. Bruggeman? I see none. Are there any in-person public comments on this report? Again, there are none. Are there any public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? Will the moderator please facilitate the lines for public comment?
We are accepting public comment on agenda item 24A. If you'd like to make an online comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let us take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
I do. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 24B, which is a discussion and possible action to consider, number one, comments received during the 45-day comment period and proposed responses thereto for the board's rulemaking to adopt California Code of Regulations, CCR's Title 16, Section 1006, and that's from AB 107, temporary licenses for military spouses or partners, and number two, adoption of CCR Title 16, Section 1006, AB 107, temporary license for military spouses or partners. This was held over from the last meeting, as I recall, and we're bringing it up for consideration at this point. So, Mr. Bruggeman, go ahead.
Thank you, Board President. As you indicated, this is concerning regulations that would implement the provisions of AB 107, which was passed in 2021, and the relevant provisions came into effect on July 1st of 2023. It would provide, it would allow qualified spouses or partners of military personnel to apply for temporary licensure, license that could be granted for no more than 12 months while they would presumably pursue standard licensure in the state of California. The package was filed and noticed on July 28th of 2023. The public comment period ended on September 12th of 2023. The board did receive one adverse comment. It's included in the meeting materials. The individual's email address has been redacted for confidentiality concerns, and we have a proposed response for the board to consider in connection with this particular comment. And I wanted to focus on the comma before we get to the proposed modified text. So the specific comment, which the text of the comment starts on page 143 of the meeting materials, but in summary, this particular commenter does not want the board to adopt the regulations. They've noted that LGBTQIA individuals have faced and continue to face discrimination in the military and in other states, and believes that allowing dental licensees from those states that permit such discrimination to obtain temporary licensure in California would be unfair. They believe that those regulations would not apply to all unions and should not be supported on that basis. Commenter also argues that these shortcuts, the proposed shortcuts, their words, by the board with temporary licensure is not necessary, given a 5-year reciprocity clause that they refer to, that the board is already permitted to states who agree to that term. Commenter is also citing the board's estimate of about 6 applicants per year to apply for temporary licensure, which we included in the notice on fiscal impact estimates to the board, and inquires as to where the number comes from. Commenter also remarks on aspects of dental insurance coverage which are unrelated to the proposal. Staff is recommending that the board reject this comment, and I'll explain why. Independent of whether or not the board issues these regulations, we are obligated under the law to provide this temporary licensure. So whatever the board's status with respect to the perspective expressed by the individual, we would still be obligated to provide the temporary licensure. And to not implement these regulations would make the environment in which to gain that temporary licensure more confusing, would complicate the board's mission, and arguably run counter to the purpose of the board to help serve the public and regulate the profession. In terms of some of the specific references made by the commenter, it's not clear to board staff what they mean by this 5-year reciprocity clause. It's conceivable that they're referring to language in Business and Professions Code section 1635.5, which deals with licensure by credential. It's a different process than what's under consideration here, and is arguably not relevant to the issue at hand. Additionally, with the concerns about, where did we get the 6 applicants per year, basically in preparing the package, we went back and determined that based on how many individuals are applying for expedited processing based on military status as a spouse or domestic partner, we'd consider a similar number to be applicable in this particular situation. But that's the extent of the situation with respect to the first part of this item. So in Ms. Shields, I don't know if there's anything you think needs to be added to the discussion before we open it up to board comments.
Right. So the issue that was raised by the commenter mainly is that he doesn't think it's necessary for the board to do regulations. As Mr. Bruggeman indicated, we do believe it is necessary to clarify what the procedures are, and licensure by credential includes a lot more requirements than this law requires. And so this law says if there are additional requirements, then you have to use their version of the law, and that version has few requirements for applicants to meet in order to get a temporary license. So we are obligated, according to the statute, to proceed with implementing this process. And so this is the recommendation, is to reject it. And the other comments about insurance coverage are unrelated to this proposal, and so we recommend that the comment be rejected. The motions are at the top of page 139 of the meeting materials, page 3 of the memo. If you agree with rejecting the comment, we would recommend option A as your motion.
And then we would make a decision on the entire package after that.
That would be a separate motion.
Okay, so we're talking about the comment only at this point and whether we reject it or not. That's clear. Are there any board comments about the comment, if you'll forgive me? I see nothing. And if not, are there any, well, we need a motion at this point. So who would like to make a motion? Dr. Chan?
I'd like to move that we support the staff recommended response to reject the comments, direct staff to proceed as recommended, to reject the comments as specified, and provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the staff recommended response in attachment 1 to this memo.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Okay. Second.
McKenzie, thank you. Ms. McKenzie. We have that. Is there any further board comment on the motion to accept this, to do option A, as it were? I see none. Before we vote, is there someone? Okay, thank you. It's a little hard to see from here, so bear with us. Are there any in-person public comments on the recommendation to reject the comment? Seeing none, are there public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the motion?
I do, thank you. Will the board secretary, we are ready to vote. Will the board secretary please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item?
That's Agenda 24B, Option A. It's a motion to direct staff to proceed as recommended to reject as stated. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Ladin, aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina? Absent. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Olage?
Olage, aye.
Olage, aye. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Thakur?
Thakur, aye.
Thakur, aye. You?
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. We are now going to consider two of the same issue of the temporary spouse licenses.
That's correct. So the board staff is coming forward to the board with recommended modifications to its text. Should the board approve this proposal, that would mean that the regulations would go out for a subsequent 15-day comment period, and if there are no adverse comments, we would then proceed with filing the package. The basis for these modifications comes from an issue that Ms. Shields encountered when dealing with similar language for another board within the department. And this, if you look, this refers specifically to the disclosure requirements that the Office of Administrative Law is concerned would conceivably require disclosure of criminal history in violation of other California statutes. If you were to look in This is mainly within subsection B of the proposed regulations, paragraphs 4, 5, and 8. And those paragraphs would require an applicant for temporary licensure to disclose if they've committed an act that would constitute grounds for denial, suspension, or revocation of a license pursuant to Business and Professions Code sections 141, 480, or 490, as well as the Articles 4 and 5 of the Dental Practice Act. These disclosures, OAL staff are concerned, would conflict conceivably with the limitations on disclosure of criminal history required by AB 2138. And so they've recommended replacing these questions with an attestation requirement and requesting a general license history for all other types of licenses that an applicant may hold in other jurisdictions. We've made changes to the modified text primarily on subsection B, paragraphs 4 and paragraph 7. OAL is also recommended, and you can find that in our proposed modified text, the addition of a licensure type category to the application, which can be found in modified text subsection B1L. And again, the modified text starts on page 152 of the meeting materials. So basically, we're proposing these modified text changes. If the board is in agreement with the modified text changes, we have suggested motion language on the top of page 140 in the memo. But at this point, I'd like to defer to Ms. Shields for any other issues I may not have addressed, and then we can open it up for board discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Shields.
I think Mr. Bergman pretty well covered it. I think that the issue has to do with the fact that OAL has concerns that any qualifying questions could result in someone disclosing that they have been arrested, convicted, or disciplined for a criminal act in another jurisdiction, no matter how we phrase the question. So their suggestion was to simply obtain a license history for their licenses in other jurisdictions, and if they've been disciplined, you would investigate to see what the underlying issues are, to see if there are grounds for denying the application. So in any event, it's just going to be a little more work for your staff, but it is what OAL is saying they would accept, and so I don't think there's much choice in terms of not accepting their recommendations. So my recommendation would be to move motion A if you don't have any other concerns with the way the text is drafted.
All right, thank you. So what we're looking to do now is to be consistent with other agencies, if that's the right word, within Department of Consumer Affairs, that our language is consistent and that we are trying to be consistent with state law and regulations. So that's what we're trying to do.
They're implementing the same law that you're implementing. They just have a different regulations package. They're doing the same thing you are. They went and filed before you did, so they got beat up, so to speak. They got, taken to task about how the language is written. Unfortunately, I was involved with writing it, so I feel bad about that. But, again, I didn't know that this was going to be a problem for you. But now that we've identified it, I'd like to get ahead of it so you don't have a similar issue.
Well, we're sorry for them, and thank you for us.
All right, thanks. Yeah.
So there we are. Are there any board comments or questions about what we're doing here and what the language says? Excuse me. Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Dr. Chan?
I'd like to move to approve the proposed modified text in attachment 4 and direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including sending out the modified text with these changes for an additional 15-day comment period. If after the 15-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulation and adopt the proposed regulations as described in the modified text for CCR Title 16, Section 1006. If the board decides to...
That's fine. That would be it. Thank you. Is there a second?
Mackenzie,
Mackenzie, thank you very much. Is there any... Now, we have a motion before us to do what's now listed as motion A in our materials. Is there any further board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the motion? Seeing none, are there public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
WebEx is open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As a reminder, there's the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner if you're having trouble finding that hand button. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, we will. Thank you. Board President, sorry, I'm reading my own words here. Board Secretary, would you be kind enough to please call the roll on this motion?
The motion is to adopt motion A on 24B, as stated by Dr. Chan. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Then I, Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, I, Forge.
Forge, aye.
Forge, I, Larin, I, McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, I, Medina, absent, Molina.
Molina, yes.
Molina, I, Olage.
Olage, yes.
Olage, I, Pacheco.
Pacheco, yes.
Pacheco, I, Thakur.
Thakur, I.
Thakur, I, you. Dr. Yu?
You, aye.
Okay, motion passes. You, I.
Thank you, Board Secretary. We're now going to move on to, I believe it's item 24C, which is a discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend CCR Title 16, Sections 1021 and 1028 related to the application for licensure and fee requirements. Mr. Bruggeman, go ahead.
Thank you, Board President. This is specific to the application for licensure for dentists. Per Business and Professions Code, Section 1632, Subdivision C. Currently, the Dental Board shall require each dentist license applicant to have taken and received a passing score on one of the following exams: the portfolio exam conducted while the applicant is enrolled in a dental school program, the clinical and written examination administered by the Western Region Examining Board, the REB, which, as we know, is being discontinued, though those those examinations can be accepted for up to 5 years from the date the exam was taken, as well as the ADEX exam, and which was adopted by the board on November 9th, 2019. Current regulations, however, have not been updated since 2014 in any significant way, and currently refer only to the REB and the portfolio examination pathways. And these regulations also do not reflect changes in other statutes that have taken place since 2014. That's why we're bringing forward this particular proposal. This would amend both the Section 1028 of the regulations, which address the application requirements, and because, based on a staff workload analysis, we determined that a fee increase was necessary, we're amending Section 1021 to reflect a new fee for licensure by examination of $500. This is an increase of $100, but again, these regulations were last significantly amended in 2014. I think this specific fee has not been changed in a significant amount of time as well. So the specific language can be found, and again, these were materials submitted after the bulk of the materials were posted online. They are available online as well. But the specific language has been revised so that we are not incorporating a form by reference, but we're replacing all of the application requirements in the regulatory text. So while this does represent a significant change in terms of the form in which it's displayed, the changes are not as dramatic as they may appear at first glance. But again, we're doing this to allow for licensure by examination. The requirements related to the licensure by portfolio are not touched in this rulemaking package. However, you may remember that the board has approved a legislative proposal to do away with the portfolio examination, and once the legislature agrees with that proposal and puts it into law, we can go ahead and repeal those regulations. So again, I'd like to defer to Ms. Shields to see if there's other specific matters that I have not addressed, but that's the extent of my report.
I'd just like to add that one of the main things that the proposal would do would be to remove the form that we currently have for dental licensure, and we're going to be moving to a narrative format in the regulations, so that would allow your staff to accept the application in a variety of formats. So you're not confined to the form itself. When you adopt a form incorporated by reference, you have to use that exact form in every case, otherwise it's not permitted under the Administrative Procedure Act. So a lot of the clients in the department are moving to this model because they want to be able to allow people to apply online, apply and submit and scan applications, just to facilitate the ability of the applicants to use a variety of methods of submission. The content would be the same in whatever format you receive it in, and that content does need to be adopted in regulations. So a lot of what you're seeing is existing standards that you have for licensure. The big change, which I want to caution you about, as we just discussed for the AB 107 rulemaking application issue, is the current standards request applicants to provide any, for instance, on page 10, I guess page 10 of the meeting materials. This is the additional attachment that went out after the other materials went out. So if you look at page 10, page 7 of the memo, up to one paragraph up from the bottom, it says, and I've added this, excluding actions based on the applicant's criminal conviction history, because as we mentioned for the other rulemaking, changes to Business and Professions Code Section 480 by AB 2138, at F2 of Business and Professions Code Section 480, the board's prohibited from asking any applicant for criminal history information. So we have to be careful about the way we ask questions now, and this is my attempt to meet that issue and still allow you to collect information about other types of discipline, because as you know, there's a variety of ways for people to be denied an application, and it's not just criminal history. So we want to make sure we're still able to ask qualifying questions to determine whether someone's fit to practice in California. So that's my attempt, and you'll be one of the first boards to try to see if OAL would agree with that method of questioning. So that, I'm just highlighting that as a potential issue with OAL. I don't know how they're going to receive it in light of what happened with our other package, but okay. I think it's worth an attempt to try to narrow the question but not throw the question out completely. So this is my solution to deal with that issue. I just wanted to bring that to your attention in case it comes back.
Thank you. Is there any board member discussion about all of the issues within this particular agenda item? Sounds like we're trying to just get up to speed and do things that are the right thing to do. So, any other board discussion on that? It seems not. So, who would like to make a motion?
Pacheco. I will make a motion to approve the proposed regulatory text.
If you wouldn't mind, I hate to ask for the canned motion, but that's kind of what we need in order for OAL to agree that it's been authorized, and so the motion language is in the last page of the memo.
Yeah, page 2, motion A would be the language
if you don't have any
suggested changes.
Okay, let's. All right.
Okay, good. I was on.
Let me, Ms. Pacheco, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Please do.
Okay, motion is to approve the proposed regulatory text in Attachment 1 and submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business and the Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the Executive Officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the text and the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If after the 45-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received and no public hearing is requested, authorize the Executive Officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed for CCR Title 16, Sections 1021 and 1028.
That is the motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Okay. Felsenfeld, second. Is there any board member discussion on the motion before we put it out to the public? I see none. Are there any in-person public comments on this motion? Excuse me. I see none. There are public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
We do. Thank you, and we are ready to vote. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
Okay, this is to adopt motion A, item 24C. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Olage?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, aye. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Takur?
Takur, aye.
Takur, aye. You?
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, Dr. Larin. We're going to move on to agenda item 24D. It's a discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend CCR Title 16, Section 1018.01, and adopt Section 1018.02 related to uniform standards for substance abusing licensees and cease practice orders. Mr. Bruggeman, you're still with us. Go, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The uniform standards for the Dental Board, they were first issued in 2013, and they're based on standards adopted by the Department of Consumer Affairs Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. Those initial standards were first established in 2011. There's been subsequent legislation, Senate Bill 796 from 2017, that required DCA to reconvene this Substance Abuse Coordination Committee and to review existing criteria for a specific uniform standard. That committee issued a revised document containing amendments to Uniform Standard Number 4, and in a document which is part of the meeting materials that's titled Uniform Standards Regarding Substance Abuse and Healing Arts Licensees from March 2019, you can see that new text. In the board's regulations, Title 16, CCR Section 1018.01, they reference the board standards, and the board is required to use these standards according to Business Professions Code Section 315 when the licensee has been determined to be a substance abusing licensee and is subject to disciplinary action. As a result of the latest revisions to the uniform standards, the board standards need to be updated to maintain consistency with that document. And so we have proposed updates to the standards as well as proposed updates to the regulations, not simply because the document is incorporated by reference in our regulations. That's why we need to update the reference to it in our regulations. Additionally, and this is with the new section 1018.02, we're incorporating language that addresses cease practice orders. And that new section would describe how the board issues a cease practice order, which would be done in the case that a probationer commits either a major violation or a minor violation of their probation, which is defined in Section 1018.01. And so it gives a process of how the board would issue the order, how the probationer would respond to such an order, and those related materials there. But I also would like to briefly review the updates that are being made to the standards document itself. So they're going to be addressing certain new standards which are not previously in the board's uniform standards document, defining major and minor violations and those specific consequences, adopting definitions for prohibited substance, for biological testing, and as well as adopting a new subsection to specify that the standards don't limit the board's authority to revoke the probation of a substance abusing licensee who's violated a term or condition. We're also, and I've already addressed the cease practice order language. There's obviously going to be some non-substantive cleanup in the standards document, but we're also going to be updating references to make sure that we're incorporating the full changes of the 2019 Substance Abuse Coordination Committee document, and to consistently refer to the respondent as a licensee rather than using gendered language. This is a style convention that is being gradually amended throughout California government documentation. In our standard related to drug testing, we're adding language permitting the board to reduce the testing frequency of a respondent that is under at least 50% supervision to a minimum of 24 times a year. Again, that's an option. And we're going to be adding a new standard, standard number 8, which covers the standards a respondent must meet before the board may remove any practice restrictions or a cease practice order, as well as the standards that respondent must meet in order to request an unrestricted license. And again, we're making everything consistent with the overarching department document related to substance abusing licensees. So we have all of the proposed regulatory language following the memo, in addition to the updates to the uniform standards document. We have suggested motion language on page 4 of the memo, depending on how the board wishes to proceed, whether they have proposed amendments to the text or not. And again, I'll defer to Ms. Shields to address any specific issues that I may have omitted, but we can open it up to board discussion at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Bruggeman. Ms. Shields?
I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions.
Okay. Thank you. We are being asked to consider a series of things together, and without objection, we will do it all as one. And are there board member comments? Dr. Chan?
I'd actually would like to make a request to the executive officer. As the state is transitioning with trends towards marijuana and now with the psychogenic mushrooms, we may have to ask our staff through the executive officer to give us a tutorial. What are we looking at in terms of some of these regs? I don't understand what I'm seeing with the other drugs or things that can change behaviors and how it interfaces with what we have to do. It's a request.
So noted. Okay. Any other board comments? And I don't think we have a motion as yet, so why don't we ask for a motion if there are no other board comments? All right, Dr. Chan.
I'd like to move to approve the proposed regulatory text and incorporated uniform standards document in attachments 1 and 2 and submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the text and the package, and set the manner for a hearing if requested. If after the 45-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received and no public hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noted for 16 CCR sections 1018.01 and 1018.02.
Thank you. And Ms. Pacheco?
Pacheco, second.
Thank you, Ms. Pacheco. Now that we have a motion, is there any further board comment on the motion itself? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the motion? Seeing none, are there public comments from those participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for the public to comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let's take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
I do, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 24E, consideration of proposed regulatory, take the vote. I was just testing you guys, thank you. Board Secretary, please take the vote.
To adopt motion A 24D, item 24D, Chen?
Jan, aye.
Chen, I. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, I. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, I. Larin, I. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, I. Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Molina, I. Olage?
Olagi, yes.
Olage, I. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, I. Thakur?
Thakur, aye.
Thakur, I. You?
You, aye.
You, I. Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item 24E, consideration of proposed regulatory language and discussion and possible action on a recommendation to initiate a rulemaking to amend CCR Title 16, Sections 1080, 1080.3, 1081, and 1081.2, and to adopt Sections 1081.3 and 1081.4 and repeal Sections 1080.1, 1080.2, 1081.1, 1082, 1082.1, 1082.3, and 1083 related to dental assisting examinations. Continue, Mr. Bergerman.
Thank you, Board President. This proposal is twofold. One aspect of the rulemaking proposal is to address the passing score in dental assisting exams, and another aspect of the proposal is to do some rulemaking cleanup in terms of organization, given that a lot of this language concerns registered dental hygienists and that the Dental Hygiene Board has been spun off and has been making their own rulemakings and adopted their own regulations that are essentially duplicative of a lot of our languages. We're trying to do both of those things in this particular proposal. With respect to the dental assisting exams, back in 2018, the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, they conducted an occupational analysis of the dentistry profession, and as part of that specific review, they recommended that the dental board not specify a passing score in regulation. And we went through, this was finally approved in 2022, a package with respect to the California Dental Law and Ethics exam, which made a similar change to what we're talking about here, moving from a specified passing score, like say for example, a 70 grade, and replaced it with a criterion referenced passing score. And such a score would apply standards for competent practice to all candidates independent of the form of examination. So this type of passing score would increase the likelihood that the candidate who passes a licensure exam has the sufficient knowledge and experience to practice safely and competently. So OPES has recommended a criterion reference methodology called the modified Angoff technique, and in that technique is a group process. You'll get licensed practitioners together with a test specialist to discuss all aspects of the practice, determining what would represent the minimum competence for entry level in the profession, and use that to establish their standard. And so in this specific language, we're recommending the same criterion reference passing score for our examinations for RDA, Registered Dental Assistant, Registered Dental Assistant and Extended Functions, RDAEF, as well as for the two permits, the occupational assistant permit, the orthodontic assistant permit and the dental sedation assistant permit. We don't currently have any text and regulations referring to passing scores for those exams. While we do for RDA and RDAEF, we're recommending that they be modified in this rulemaking proposal. Additionally, as I mentioned, because of the changes in regulations established by the Dental Hygiene Board, we've been working with them to essentially produce a lot of cleanup, and many of the changes that we're proposing here would pursue that particular goal. This proposal was brought before the Dental Assisting Council at their meeting yesterday. They were very wholeheartedly in support of it and recommend that the board pass the proposed rulemaking as well. So, again, I'd like to defer to our council here if any issues that I may have overlooked in the brief, but otherwise we can proceed to board discussion.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Apologize. So I think that this is a part of our commitment to continue to clean up the dental assisting regulations. This would largely clean up the entire article relating to dental assisting examination and procedures. It would also add specificity as to exam content, which doesn't currently exist for all of the dental assisting examinations, and update procedures consistent with current test exam administrator, PSI's procedures for administering exam and exam security. So you'll see a lot of the exam security issues have been added to the regulations to make clear what requirements we're going to have to make sure that you're who you say you are, and identification and identity is established before administration and exam security is maintained. So you'll see all the attachments include what the exam candidates would receive, which is the examination outlines for all the examinations. We're going to be incorporating all of those by reference so that we're consistent with what exam candidates get. So we're going to continue to update that. As the examinations change over time, we'll be eliminating and striking and adding. So the model would be to, every time we have a new exam outline, we're going to be updating the regulation to make it consistent with what we're going to be providing exam candidates. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I want to add the Dental Assisting Council did approve this, recommend approving this yesterday at their meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So, with that being said, is there any board member comment on this? We've actually talked about it before. Ms. Pacheco, are you going to speak?
To make a motion.
Well, okay. If there's no board member comment, please do.
Okay, direct staff to submit the text in Attachment A to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and the Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the Executive Officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dr. Loren, thank you. We have a second. Is there any, now that the motion's been made, is there any board member discussion on the motion itself? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the motion? Seeing none, are there public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for the WebEx participants.
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
We do, thank you. I think this time we'll take a vote. What do you think, Dr. Loren? If you'll call the roll and record the votes, we will see how we do on that.
Okay, this is to adopt motion A, item 24E. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, yes. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Olage?
Olagi, aye.
Olage, aye. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Thakur? Dr. Thakur?
Thakur, aye. Thakur, aye.
Okay, you?
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Let's see where we are here. It looks like we are now on to agenda item 25A. Is that correct?
We are.
Okay. Did you want to speak, Dr.?
I just wanted again to thank Ms. Shields for her assistance with Mr. Bruggeman. We greatly appreciate it. This was a lot of work, and they did a fabulous job. Thank you.
Indeed.
I'd also like to thank staff and Dr. Montez and Board Counsel for their assistance as well. Thank you.
Okay. But you're still here. Are you done with the regulatory package, Ms. Shields?
I am. Thank you so much.
For your participation. I have a feeling you'll never be out of a job. All right, agenda item number 25A. Mr. Bruggeman, you're still with us here. So discussion and possible action to revise previously approved legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 regarding course requirements for orthodontic assistant permit and dental sedation assistant permit and registered dental assistant licenses. Go ahead, Mr. Bruggeman.
Thank you, President Felsenfeld and board members. The specific text that we're looking to amend can be found starting at page 259 of the meeting materials. Because we've revisited this language a couple of times, just want to clarify that the revisions that we're looking to make here would be in double underline if we were making recommendations to add text, and double strike through if we're looking to remove text. The additions that have been previously approved are in blue. The deletions that were previously approved are in red. So this specific proposal, as we had previously put forward in November in November of 2021 at the Dental Assisting Council meeting, were specifying a time frame within which folks that are seeking an RDA license or the orthodontic assistant permit or the dental sedation assistant permit wanted to specify that they had to pass certain courses within a certain amount of time prior to applying for those specific credentials. And we indicated that that would be a 5-year time frame. The board considered this proposal at the February 2022 meeting and approved it. In going through our sunset review process and report, we received feedback that the language with respect to the basic life support course in this proposal should be revised, as that it specifies that an individual could have taken that course within 5 years of application, but as you're all very much aware as practicing professionals, that those courses have a much shorter renewal period, standards change more frequently, and that making sure that an individual has current certification in basic life support at the time of application would be a more appropriate standard to require. And so the proposed changes to this legislative proposal would make sure that the language with respect to basic life support required current certification instead of successful completion within 5 years prior to application. That's the extent of the change. It is listed in 3 separate sections, which is why the proposal is relatively lengthy. But that is the extent of the changes that we're asking the board to consider at this time.
And I'd like to add again, Tracy Montez, Executive Officer. This was brought to our attention during the October meeting where we reviewed the sunset report. So again, this is why, we read everything and we draft it, but yet sometimes we don't catch everything. So it's so important that we have the participation of our stakeholders and the public to help us with these proposals, because that's how this came to our attention. So thank you.
Thank you, stakeholders. So we have some discussion to repeal parts of the old regulations that are not applicable any longer and put in new ones. We'll put that all together as one. Are there any board member discussion on this?
Just to be clear, this would be to modify a legislative proposal for inclusion in our sunset report, not regulations.
Okay, my bad. Okay, thank you. So any discussion on that? Is there a motion?
Pacheco?
Thank you.
Make a motion to move to include in the board sunset.
Excuse me. So I'm going to point your direction to page 258, because we have to do this in 2 steps. We need to rescind the legislative proposal that was approved in February, and then we'll take a second vote to approve the revised. So where it says under rescind, we have some suggested language.
Okay. So move to withdraw the previously approved.
You don't have to move it. You never finished it.
Legislative proposal that was recommended for inclusion in the board sunset review report to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1. And then the motion. That is the motion.
Second on that, please. Alagi, thank you. Is there any further board member discussion on this, on the motion? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the motion? Seeing, Ms. Becker?
Sherry Becker, representing Sherry Becker. I have confusion, and I would ask for clarification on page 259 of the meeting materials, where it's added back in section 1750.2A2, the successful completion within 5 years to application of the 2-hour board-approved dental practice act and the 8-hour board-approved class in infection control. I think we had changed that to be something different. So I apologize if I'm confused, but also in 1750.4A, number 2, the same thing that's added back in with the 5 years. So I'm just asking for clarification, if I may.
Let's take about a 5-minute recess, see if we can look up what we have from the past and see if you're correct.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So we did a little bit of research, and it took a while, but, and direct to Ms. Becker, we did, the text that is written there that you were concerned about is the way it is. And the only thing that's been modified is that which is in blue for the changes that we're proposing to act on today. Thank you for your concerns, though. All right, so where are we at? We were, good, Ms. Wells, go ahead.
Just a little bit more there. So the February 2022 board meeting materials, agenda item 30, you can see this text that adds the within 5 years prior to application to 1750.2A2. It sounded like that's what you were questioning, whether or not that was changed by the board. The board adopted that language at the February 2022 meeting, which you can see in the meeting minutes for that meeting. And so now we're returning. They didn't take any action since February 2022, and we're just trying to clarify for purposes of basic life support that those courses have to be current in certification, not taken within 5 years. So we're using the same text approved by the board in February 2022, and we're making a modification for just the BLS course certification. So at this point, we're still in public comment in the room.
That is correct. We're still in public comment on the motion to rescind that which we put into the sunset report to date. So is there any additional public comment on that from in person? All right, DCA moderator, would you please facilitate public comment for those on WebEx?
We are open to public comment from WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
I do, thank you. So we are about to vote on the first recommendation to rescind the prior submission in our sunset report relative to this topic. Dr. Loren, if you'll take the vote, please.
Are we doing that separate or together? I thought you said together. Separate? Okay.
No, we're going to separate them.
Okay.
I did say we'd do them together, but it's easier, it's cleaner to do it this way, I think.
Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin? Aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina? Molina? We'll go back. Olage?
Yes.
Olage, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Takur?
Takur, aye.
Takur, aye.
Molina, aye.
Okay, Molina, aye. You?
You, aye.
UI, motion passes.
Thank you. We now have the second part of this to put in new language, as it were, to the sunset report. And Ms. Pacheco, I think you're good.
Yes, move to include in the board sunset review report a revised recommendation to amend Business and Professions Code Sections 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 to clarify the RDA, OA, and DSA course completion requirements for license and permit applicants.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dr. Chan is seconding it. Is there any board comment or discussion of the motion itself? That's not actually a motion. We need you made the motion, right? You went right to the motion. Okay. So we need any discussion on the motion itself. Seeing none, is there public comment? Dr. Gagliotti, good morning. Identify yourself. Please, microphone on and identify yourself for the tape, if you will.
Dr. Lori Glardy, representing FADE. Just a point of clarification, if I'm reading this correct, on page 259. So an RDA can take the OA exam, but they would have to take the 8-hour board infection control course? Because it says they need the DPA, the 2-hour, which you'd take, but then you also need the 8-hour? So an RDA wouldn't be exempt from that?
Normally, we don't respond to questions during public comment, but just for the sake of moving this forward, that's existing law. So we're not making any changes to the 2-hour DPA requirement and 8-hour board-approved course in infection control. That's still going to be the law. The difference that the board approved in February of 2022 was requiring that successful completion of those courses within 5 years of the application.
I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Glardy. Any other in-person public comment on the second motion? If not, DCA facilitator, please, the moderator, would you please facilitate public comment via the WebEx?
Absolutely. We are taking public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, do you wish to continue?
We will. Thank you so much, sir. And we now go to Dr. Larin to take the vote.
Is to approve the revised legislative proposal with option A, Chen.
Chan, aye.
Chen, aye. Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, aye.
Aye. Forge.
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina.
Yes.
Molina, aye. Olage.
Olage, yes.
Olage, aye. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Sakur.
Sakur, aye.
Sakur, aye. You.
UI.
UI, motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Brugman, you've had a lot of work with the regulatory package. Let's talk a little bit about the legislative calendar and that, if you will, item 26A.
Certainly. This is strictly an informational item. You'll find in the pages 264 through 267 the tentative legislative calendars for 2024 for both the State Senate and State Assembly. Because 2024 is an even-numbered year, the calendar is a bit more compressed compared to odd-numbered years. For instance, in 2023, the legislature adjourned in the middle of September. In 2024, the target date for adjournment is at the end of August. So the legislative activity will be slightly accelerated. We would still anticipate that the opportunity for the board to address and take positions on any legislation is likely to be in the May meeting, possibly in the February meeting, depending on when legislation is introduced. But realistically, May would be the one where we'd have the most material to work with, for lack of a better term. And any bills that would be signed by the governor would need to be signed by 30 days following the last day of the session, so the end of September at this point. Realistically, as Dr. Montez indicated, we would anticipate our sunset review hearing to take place probably in March, and that the related bill would have to follow the calendar in order to make sure that it is signed and enacted before our authority expires.
Thank you. This is informational. There's no vote to be taken. Are there board comments on the report for the calendar? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the report for the calendar, the legislative calendar? Seeing none, are there public comments from the individuals who are participating via the WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
We are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And just a reminder, we have that Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen where you can type comment, just in case you can't find that hand button. Looking around, we have no requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to move on to item 26B, the 2023 end of session legislative summary report. This will have an action item at the end. Mr. Bruggeman, please.
Thank you, President Felsenfeld. So for this agenda item, I have a brief summary memo before the actual summary report that we're asking the board to take a vote on. The summary memo covers all of the legislation that the board staff have been tracking, and then specifically calls out the items that were of relevance to the board, its members, or licensees that have been acted on. And in most instances, for instance, the memo also concerns the 5 bills the board took a position on in 2023. AB 481, which did not pass through the Senate Appropriations Committee and was not signed into law. AB 936, which was signed into law and came into effect on October 8th of 2023, that expands the pool of dental students that can participate in sponsored healthcare events. AB 1552, which would have reverted the process for approving foreign dental schools back to the board. That bill did not advance through the legislature. SB 372, which will require the Department of Consumer Affairs, of which the board is a part, to make changes to the processes to permit name and gender changes under certain qualified circumstances, and adopting their licensee records to conform with those changes. That bill did pass, as well as SB 544, which was a revision to the Bagley-Keene open meeting law, which would add another teleconferencing option to the suite of possibilities that the board has to conduct its meetings. Other legislation of relevance includes SB 143, which beside modifying the teleconferencing laws for the remainder of 2023, also made specific to California certain changes in federal law which permits occupational license portability for military service members and their spouses or partners. This is separate from AB 107. This is changes to a federal law, and the specific language of SB 143 gives guidance to the department and its boards to, to better effectively comply with that federal law. And that's the extent of the summary. The specific report starts on page 271, and that it gives specific description to the bills that were chaptered, signed, and put into effect. So not all of the legislation that I discussed in the summary memo is going to be included there. It's relatively brief, as it only covers bills in the first year of this 2-year session. When we do this again next November, it will include all of the legislation in the 2023-2024 legislative session. But that's the extent of my report. We're asking the board to consider approving the summary report, and that once it is approved, that we would publish it on our website as we have done in past.
Thank you. Okay. Any board comment on the report that Mr. Bruggeman just gave us? I see none, so can we have a motion to, Ms. Pacheco?
A motion to adopt the attached legislative summary for 2023 legislative session and direct staff to post the report on the board's website.
And I'll second that. Okay. Now that we have a motion to adopt it and post it, is there any further board discussion? Seeing none, is there in-person public comment? Seeing none, will the DCA moderator please facilitate public comment from those participating via WebEx?
We are once again open for public comment via WebEx for 26B. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
We do. Thank you. Dr. Loreen, would you please take the vote?
This to adopt the attached legislative summary of 2023 legislative session and direct staff to post the report on the board website. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge.
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina.
Molina, yes.
Molina, aye. Olage.
Olage, yes.
Olage, aye. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Sakur.
Sakur, aye.
Sakur, aye. You.
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bergman and Ms. Shields, thank you so much for all the work you've done. There's been a lot to do today, and I think we got through it okay. Now turn it over to Dr. Montez for item 27, the election of officers.
Thank you very much. Pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 1606, the board is required to elect a president, vice president, and secretary from its membership. Pursuant to the board's policy and procedure manual adopted in August 2016, it is the board's policy to elect officers at its final meeting of the calendar year for service during the next calendar year. The newly elected officers shall assume the duties of their respective offices on January 1st of the new year. And I believe there's a typo there because the procedure manual was updated and adopted in 2021. So we are going to, we have in here, obviously, the roles and responsibilities of our board officers. And pursuant to the procedures manual, we will start with secretary first. And at this time, I have received one nomination for the position of secretary, and that's Dr. Loren. So for the record, I would like to confirm that she is accepting this nomination. You're welcome. Are there any other nominations for this position? Okay, at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to elect Dr. Loren secretary for the 2024 calendar year. Dr. Chan, do I have a second? Dr. Felsenfeld. Okay, board. Dr. Loren, would you call the vote? Or I'm like, who does that? Oh, sorry. Yes,
Chan?
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I got to do comments. See, I forgot. Public comment on the motion. Online. Public comment.
If you're done with the room, we are accepting public comment online for the nomination. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Looking around, we have no requests for public comment at the moment. Do you wish to continue?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Would you please call for the vote?
Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina? Absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Molina, aye. Olage?
Olage, yes.
Olage, aye. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Sakur?
Sakur, aye.
Sakur, aye. You?
You, aye.
You, aye. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on to the office of Vice President, I have received one nomination for Ms. Pacheco, and for the record, to confirm, Ms. Pacheco, do you accept this nomination? I do. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for this position? Thank you. I need to now ask for a motion.
I'd like to move that Ms. Joanne Pacheco be elected Vice President of the Board.
Second.
Dr. Loren, thank you. Any board comment? Any public comment on site for the motion? Seeing none, moderator, would you facilitate comment for online?
We are open for public comment on another nomination. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Motion for Vice President Pacheco. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, yes. Forge?
Forge, aye.
Forge, yes. Aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Molina, aye. Olage?
Olage, yes.
Olage, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Thakur?
Thakur, aye.
Thakur, aye. You?
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our final office, and this is the Office of President. I have received two nominations to date, Dr. Chan and Dr. Felsenfeld. So for the record, I would like to first confirm, Dr. Chan, would you like to accept this nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Felsenfeld, would you like to accept this nomination?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any other nominations for this position. Okay, I would like to now ask for a motion for one of these nominees.
Pacheco? Making a motion for Dr. Felsenfeld as president.
Okay. All right. Any board comment on this first motion? Any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, moderator, please open up for comment via WebEx.
We are open for public comment on this motion. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Dr. Loren, would you please take the vote on the first motion, Dr. Felsenfeld as president?
Chan?
Chan, abstain.
Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Forge?
Forge, abstain.
Larin, abstain. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, yes. Medina? I'm sorry, absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Molina, yes. Olage?
Olage, abstain.
Olage, abstain. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Thakur? Thakur? You?
You abstain.
Thakur?
You get my vote, Dr. Loren?
No, no, Dr. Thakur. What is your vote?
Thakur, aye.
Thakur, aye. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so that's 5. The motion does not pass. We needed 6 for the motion to pass. So do we have a motion on our second nominee?
I have a motion for Dr. Chan, president.
Okay. Dr. Loren, do I have a second?
Olage, second.
Okay. Any Any board comment on the motion? Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, moderator, please open the lines for the WebEx comment.
We are open for the next nominee. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As a reminder, there's the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. If you're having trouble finding that hand button or you need something else. Looking around, we have no requests for public comment. Do you wish to continue?
Yes, I would. May we call the vote for the nomination of Dr. Chan for president?
Chan, aye. Chan, I'm sorry. Of course. Sorry about that. I'm voting. Chan. Felsenfeld.
I will abstain.
Abstain. Ford.
Forge, aye.
Ford, aye. Larin, aye. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie abstain.
Abstain. Mackenzie. Medina. Absent. Molina.
Abstain.
Abstain. Olage.
Olage, yes.
Olage, aye. Pacheco.
Pacheco, abstain.
Abstain. Pacheco. Sakur.
Sakur, abstain.
Abstain. And you?
You, aye.
You, aye. Oh, 5 and 5.
All right, we have 5 again.
You can share.
Yeah, are there any other nominations, questions, comments? Or a motion? Just, I'm gonna, yeah.
I'll make a motion to nominate Dr. Felsenfeld for president.
Okay. We have a third motion from Ms. McKenzie for Dr. Felsenfeld for president. Do I have a second?
Pacheco, second.
Pacheco, second. Okay, any comments from board members? Any public comment? Any comment? Moderator, please open the lines for comment via WebEx.
We are once again open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise a hand. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Dr. Loren, would you call the roll for Dr. Felsenfeld as president?
Yes. Chan?
Chan, abstain.
Chan, abstain. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Yes. Forge?
Forge, abstain.
Forge, abstain. Larin, abstain. Mackenzie?
Mackenzie, yes.
Yes. Mackenzie. Medina, absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Molina, yes. Olage?
Olage, abstain.
Abstain. Molage. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Takur?
Sakur, aye.
Takur, aye. You? Dr. Yu?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, sorry, it's abstain.
Oh.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain. So 5. Just 5.
So we're at 5 again. Do I need to ask council, is this something we would roll over to the possible next year until we have a full slate of officers, since we are, a full board, since we are missing a board member? Or do we just keep going?
I really don't know. I've never encountered this before. I mean, if there's, no movement here, and the board rules require a vote to elect, if this is an impasse, I guess you would have to just move forward without a president.
Yeah. Okay.
And potentially hold this over until February.
Okay.
Maybe take a 10-minute?
10-minute recess, I guess, and that will get us till about 5 to 11, is that correct? 10:55? Okay, thank you. I think our recess is over. Our legal team has done some investigation, and we're going to have some thought. We're still back to our full quorum, and we still have our people up there. I guess we're okay. 1, 2, 4. They're all still there.
Okay, Ms. Welch is going to elaborate a bit.
For purposes of approving a motion, we've settled on that it requires a majority of the members present and voting. So, as an example of the motions that have we've already decided failed, if there were 5 members voting in favor and 5 abstaining, the 5 abstentions would not count, and all 5 of the members voting in favor would make the motion pass. So with this understanding, I think the board needs to take another, have another motion and take a vote.
So I will move again for Dr. Felsenfeld as president.
Pacheco, second.
Okay, is there any other board member comments, or is there board member comment on this motion?
This is Dr. Forge, and I'm not quite sure I understand what Ms. Welch was saying or trying to explain.
If you abstain, well, I'm going to let Tara do this.
Okay. So normally you've got 10 members present, so you would normally require, if all 10 members were voting and present, you would require a majority of 6 to pass the motion. From the example that I used, you only have 5 members participating in the vote because they have voted in favor, with 5 members abstaining. So those 5 members, their votes would count. If all 10 members took a position either in favor or against the motion, then it would require a majority vote to pass the motion. So say all 10 members vote yes or no, then it would require a majority of those 10 members, 6 members, to pass the motion. If the vote continues to be 5 members voting in favor and 5 members abstaining, the 5 members abstaining do not count. So the 5 members who are voting in favor would pass the motion.
Okay, I get it. So saying abstaining means not voting, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, so any other board comments or questions on the motion or process? Okay, are there any public comments on the motion on site? Seeing none, are there any public comments via WebEx? Moderator, please facilitate.
We are open for public comment via WebEx on the motion. If you'd like to comment on the nomination, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users need to dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
I do, thank you. Dr. Loren, please take the vote on the motion to elect Dr. Felsenfeld as president.
I disagree with the optics and vote no.
No. Felsenfeld?
Yes, Felsenfeld.
Forge?
Forge abstain.
Letty, no. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
Yes. Medina? Absent. Molina?
Molina, yes.
Yes. Olage?
Olage, yes.
Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Takur?
Takur, aye.
Takur, aye. You?
You abstain.
6.
And the motion passes. So I'd like to congratulate our new set of officers, Dr. Felsenfeld, President, Ms. Pacheco, Vice President, and Dr. Loren, Secretary. I know that this is always difficult for the board because we have exceptional members. And I appreciate the thoughtful process, and our meetings always move super smooth. So it's, you know, we have to kind of end it with a bang. So this was it. And I'd like to open it up for any board comments before we close out this item. And Dr. Chan?
Point of personal privilege. I'd like to thank Dr. Felsenfeld for navigating the last 2 years through some interesting waters that the board had to go through. So thank you, Alan.
Okay, thank you. It's been a little bit trying, hasn't it? But let's move on to agenda item number 28, public comment on future agenda items. This is something that we did many years ago for a long time, and it's being brought back in a little different way, and we're going to open the mics for members of the public who would like to submit comments online or in person, not online, excuse me, via WebEx or here for items that we could consider in the future for our agenda. So we will start by asking, are there any in-house public members who would like to suggest something for us to consider in the future? I see nothing. How about via the WebEx? Do we have anybody on the WebEx who would like to suggest a topic for future consideration by the board? Facilitator, please open the lines.
We are open for public comment on future agenda items. If you'd like to make a suggestion, if you have a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. Dial-in users need to dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. We could use some Jeopardy music. All right. Seeing no requests, would you like to continue?
I would, thank you. And we are going to continue this item in the future. And Dr. Montez would like to make some comments before we close out for the day.
So I just wanted to explain that this item used to just specifically reference future legislative proposals. And again, feedback from our stakeholders asked us to widen this item. And so we now have included future agenda items. Again, still following Bagley-Keene and things that we need to do, but it's another opportunity here for the public to come up and make a comment or provide some feedback. So again, we're listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I want to thank you, moderator, for your work, board staff, for all of your work, our members of the board, and the public. We had a good long meeting. We got a lot done, and we want to conclude now the November 8th, 9th, 2023 quarterly dental board meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.